Welcome back to another Litigare podcast, where we partner with trial lawyers across the nation to navigate the psychological nuances of litigation. Today's podcast, episode 108, we are talking about our most recent journal article that we've published on our Litigare website, Identifying and Handling the Narcissistic Witness. Now, that article can be found at www.trialconsult.com. As we stated in this article, we chose to feature this article in this podcast really because of just the sobering, shocking, and astounding findings that the psychological researchers across the country are saying about the changing value system in our nation. And in a nutshell, narcissistic values are on the rise. As we indicated in the article itself, that just about 10%, now this is a date from 2007, but at that point when that study was published in 2007, 10% of American society presented with narcissistic traits. Now, there's a lot of reasons why these findings are so astounding. And before we dive into a lot of the aspects around narcissistic traits and why there are the serious ramifications that there are because of this, we really have to get it in our minds that when we start to see more witnesses and more members of our jury presenting with narcissistic traits, that's going to change how we're going to handle our voir dire. It's going to change how we're going to handle our depositions and how we handle our witnesses at trial. So really the very nature of narcissism, and so we're going to just kind of use narcissism as this way to cover narcissistic traits and to cover narcissistic personality disorder, but in reality, we're not going to necessarily see an increase in narcissistic personality disorder, but we will potentially see that in some of the witnesses that we are involved with. But so that very nature of narcissism is going to alter and negate current effective trial strategies and techniques. This isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow, but I guarantee you in the next 15 to 20 years, we are going to be seeing a massive change in the way that people respond to the current trial techniques that we use. Specifically, pieces around appealing to the feelings of jurors and getting the juries basically to walk a mile in another person's shoes. I mean, this stuff is really mute to folks with narcissistic traits. So let's talk a little bit more about this concept of human connection. You know, as lawyers, we try and connect to the jury. We want the jury to connect to our clients. We want the jury to connect to our story. So many pieces of this is all based around connection. Well, I'm telling you right now, folks, that narcissism, that's the kryptonite to this value. Specifically because the narcissist sees themselves as superior. Now, the superiority is more than just someone who's a little bit egotistical. This superiority comes to a place where it truly is a core value that they believe that in order to be successful in life and to be accepted in society, that they must see people as beneath them and that other people have just gotten what they've deserved. That if they're in the situation they're in, that they have done something to cause themselves to be in this situation, and that the person with the narcissistic traits sees themselves as completely immune to that person's situation and will distance themselves from that person, specifically because they believe in some kind of pathological way that by distancing themselves, they make themselves look even more better, that's even a word, and more superior, so that they can gain the admiration of everyone around them. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper about this gaining of admiration. But for you defense lawyers who might be listening to this podcast and think that it might be a good idea to listen to some of the things that we're saying here today and kind of get some of those narcissists onto your jury, that's a huge mistake. Because If a narcissist believes that for their betterment that they need to side with the plaintiff, boy, that's exactly what they're going to do. So just because a person presents with narcissistic traits, or because we are seeing an increase in narcissistic values in our society, doesn't mean that that is a plaintiff-friendly or a defense-friendly attitude. It's not. The key to this is the narcissist is always looking for what fits their needs. No more and no less. But the needs are based upon being the best and smartest in the room. And if that gets threatened, if they perceive that you are threatening that, they will do everything in their power to stab you in the back, to destroy your arguments, so that they can then attach to that pathological need and that pathological desire to be the best and the smartest. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about has come from a multitude of researchers. And in the article, I mentioned Susan Krauss Whitmore. Now, she's a PhD and teaches at the University of Amherst in Massachusetts. Another fella named Josh Foster, and he's at University of South Alabama. And then probably one of the more famous researchers, Jean M. Twenge, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. And she is an associate professor at SDSU, that's San Diego State University, one of my undergraduate alma maters. And she is the author of both Generation Me and the co-author of the Narcissistic Epidemic, And you can find direct links to purchase those books at our website, again, www.trialconsult.com. And if you go to the Handling the Narcissistic website, you will find direct links at the end of the article, which also has other research studies and recommended readings for your edification. Now, really, they have raised some very, very, very sobering facts about what is going on with what's happening with narcissism in this country. In the research article, we talked a little bit about the 10% of society, which I had mentioned further. But I think that the real key about what's happening here and what the real key for the trial lawyer is as we're learning how to develop new strategies, styles, tips, and techniques in order to handle these changes is what's going on with the change of societal values. I did mention one research study, in the article that just talked about something called the Narcissistic Personality Inventory. That's the NPI. It's often given to college students as a way to test what value system exists within the next up-and-coming generation. And that, as the study indicated, from 2002 to 2007, the NPI scores increased twice as fast as all the scores from 1982 to 2006. As I said a little earlier in the article, we're not really talking about an increase of the true DSM diagnosis of the narcissistic personality disorder, but what we really are talking about is narcissistic traits. And as mentioned in the article, the narcissistic traits at this point certainly is something that's of great concern and something to be worried about. The reason I say that is because truly the amount of people with narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is very low and most likely will continue to stay low in society. And so that's safe, that's easy to handle. A good clinically trained trial consultant that's in clinical psychology or behavioral science would be able to identify that and be able to come up with good tips and tricks and techniques to handle that. Pretty easy to spot, very easy to handle. What becomes more difficult is when we have a group of people with narcissistic traits, a group of people who don't really meet the full criteria of a narcissistic personality disorder, who tend to hold and present with solid values in society, but at the same time, they are balanced against this very much, not just me, but this very superior me, and very vengeful and resentful backing in those values. And you know what I mean by that is that you can end up with a jury that has this sense of these narcissistic values that look at your client and become very resentful about how they perceive it's the accident that they caused, or how they perceive the amount of money that they're going to get, and that person doesn't deserve that they, the person with the narcissistic traits, is the one that actually deserves that money. So why are they helping this person to get what they deserve? They should just go out there and fix it themselves. This is beneath me. Who are these people to think that they could ask me to give them that? That is the type of mindset that's going on with the narcissistic personality. I mean, that is very, very, very worrying as we move into the next 10 to 15 years. These are the folks that we're going to be representing. These are the folks that we're going to be cross-examining. These are the folks that are going to be sitting on our juries. Now, I think that there's sort of, just as a reminder or maybe a introduction, because there might be those of you that are just listening to the podcast and not reviewing the article. I'm going to go over what are some of the most general traits of what we consider the narcissistic individual. Now, in the article, I focused mostly on the witness. In this podcast, I'm trying to focus more on the narcissistic traits in general and how they are seen in both the jury and in the witnesses that we're going to be working with throughout our careers. So some of the narcissistic traits that we're going to see most often is presents as having high levels of self-esteem. Now, they're going to present to someone who's incredibly confident and someone who has high locus of control, someone that's able to handle most everything that comes their way or handle absolutely everything that comes their way. In reality, all of that is false. It's just a presentation that they give. And that couples very closely with the concept of grandiosity, which then couples right in with the concept of self-focused and self-important. Now, of course, when you're grandiose, you believe that you're more important, more attractive, and more intelligent than anybody else. There is a deep, and I mean unavoidable, need for admiration. Now, this is very different than the desire to be liked or the desire to want to be within a group. This is something that the narcissist values. And when I say narcissist, again, remember I'm talking about individuals with narcissistic traits. And something that any good clinically trained, clinically psychologically trained trial consultant would be able to pick out during a deposition. And they're truly, truly, truly just not concerned with how others view them. So they're really not going to be very worried about if increased insurance rates affect them, or if society continues to have doctors that commit malpractice. I mean, they're just really not concerned about that because they just really don't give a shit about anything or anybody. All they do is care about themselves and what their internal needs are. Now, let's just dive in real quickly to the causes of the narcissistic traits in a personality. Now, one of my legal advisors had gone over the article and had said to me, Peter, what's really the reason for going into the causes of the narcissistic traits? As a lawyer, why do I need to know that? And my answer to this individual really was because if we know what's inside the narcissistic personality, that is how we develop the psychological strategies. If it's a narcissistic witness that is within our trial group, then we know how to work with them to help them work through some of the pitfalls. If they are an opposing witness, we will then know how to utilize techniques in order to get at the truth. If they are narcissistic jury members, then we know how to identify and find those individuals. So truly, the causes for narcissism and the narcissistic personality are essential. I can't say that enough. Are essential to the trial strategies. When Litigare talks about the psychological trial, this is exactly what we're talking about. Get deep down and dirty to the personality traits of the jury, the judge, our witnesses, and opposing counsel. Build strategy and structure around that. That's what gives us the most control over trial. That's what gives us the most control over our study. And that's what gives us the most control over presenting our evidence. Now, we did make mention of a wonderful little pocketbook that I am looking for right now that was authored by Mark Zimmerman, and the book is called Interview Guide for Evaluating DSM-4 Psychiatric Disorders and Mental Status Examination. This book is a gem, especially for all the trial lawyers out there that work on cases that have mental health issues. You have a post-traumatic stress disorder case, you need this guide. You have a traumatic brain injury case, you need this guide. If you're a criminal lawyer and you are working on cases with individuals that have committed crimes due to mental illness, you need this guide. It's small, it's inexpensive, and it gives the down and dirty about the questions that are asked to make the evaluations that we as psychologists make to ascertain and diagnose mental disorders. Great book. Put it into your arsenal. Now, so I sort of digress there a little bit, but that basically in a nutshell, it was Freud and then certain followers of Freud and other graduates from Freud's school of psychoanalysis. This is European psychoanalysis, not American psychoanalysis. That indiscriminate parental praise coupled with coldness and rejection, in essence, basically causes the narcissistic personality. Now, the reason we want to know this is because as a trial lawyer, you want to know how you want to play yourself with that witness and get at the truth. So again, that's the reason why we want to know those pieces. Now, interesting thing about gender, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're treated that way, you can develop narcissistic traits. Yet there is evidence that their gender does influence if you're going to have covert or overt narcissism. And this is specifically in women. Men tend to be more overt in their narcissism, but that does not negate the fact that they can be very covert. So we don't want to fall into some kind of gender trap here. We just want to sort of keep that in the back of our minds. Now, I just should add in here right now that all the folks that present with the narcissistic traits don't necessarily come from households where they have parental praise coupled with coldness and rejection. What we've been seeing in society and what we've been seeing in some past generations, and this certainly includes some folks in college, and of course this doesn't include everybody. These are just the extrapolated generalizations from the psychological research that the Litigare staff reviews as we develop these podcasts and we write these articles. So, in general, the youthful generations of today are raising each other more than past generations. What that means is that there is less parental involvement and more peer-to-peer involvement. And so the peers are guiding and educating each other. The other involvement, of course, is media. And I'm not one to, hang a black flag on media. All I'm saying is that medium is heavily influencing the value system of today's society. Now, in one of the studies that we quoted in the article, so the study that was done on television back in the 70s indicated that one of the top values that the TV shows promoted was basically the social contract. We have to work together. We've got to pay our dues. We have to take one for the team. Everyone else is just as important as ourselves, and at times more important than ourselves. That we have to curb our own feelings, curb our own needs, sublimate our own desires in order to help protect society and help protect our family members and help protect people around us. That was the value at that period of time. Now, in the mid-2000s, that value, the social contract, dropped to number 13 in the values that TV espoused. And the top values that TV espoused were narcissistic values, traits of the narcissist that were reinforced and made positive by what youth are seeing on television. So when you couple the research with youth raising youth, along with the research of the changing values and the increase in narcissism, what we've missed is that gateway person or people to question the information that the youth are getting and to talk about, is a narcissistic trait and is a narcissistic value a valuable value for society and for the individual, and why not? And boy, those are discussions that certainly are going to go on with the jury as they debate and answer. And to emphasize the narcissistic juror, if you have a narcissistic juror that is overt, they're going to be very domineering, and they will do everything that they possibly can to politic the jurors and to really work at taking the power that they perceive you as the trial lawyer has, and that translated power to your client, and stomp that out and take it for themselves, because that is their goal. That is their only desire and goal. Now, for the true narcissistic personality disorder, that's an internal process that comes from a myriad of complex psychological interweavings. For the person just with the narcissistic traits, that's what they just believe is the true value of how they should behave and operate. That's why it is so concerning. Now, there are some solutions, obviously, to these situations. One of them is the personality assessment. Litigare certainly does the personality assessment. We've done it for a very long time. I believe that some of our competitors have seen our success in it and have added it into their arsenal, which we're very happy to see. And those that have done that are all clinically trained psychologists, so it's good to see that also. And as we always say, that whoever you choose to be your consultant in these types of situations, you must make sure that they have the clinical training behind the letters behind their name. Just because they have a PhD or just because they have an MA and they say they went to graduate school and got this does not give them the actual skill and expertise to be able to identify these things and come up with true psychological strategies. There are tons of great consultants out there. Of course, we would love you to choose us, and there are a ton of great consultants out there that can do this. So the personality assessment is certainly one of the most important. That just means bringing your consultant in early, getting them to review the depositions or actually be present, which would be best, at the depositions, either through a live feed or actually in the room to help identify these systems, to help give you some quick questions to ask and to be able to trip it up. If things really worked beautifully, you might be able to trip up some witnesses well enough that you could drive this thing into a settlement and not even have to take it to trial. Litigare certainly has participated in depositions where we have been able to do that and drive these things right into a settlement negotiation and get the client what they deserve. When we start to have narcissistic values predominantly in society and in our jury, then our trial strategy has to be very different, because exposing that narcissistic value is just going to say, the jury's going to say, well, that's a norm. That's what we expect from our doctor. That's what we expect from that expert. That's what we expect from that lay witness. So then that falls into that area of what's normative, and juries love what is normative. So as time evolves and we work with strategies and that's something that we will certainly tackle on an individual basis as time increases. But I guarantee you that as time increases, we will see more and more of these narcissistic individuals on our juries. Now, we talked a little bit in the Article 2 about certain questions that you can ask a narcissistic witness in deposition. There are certainly also questions that we can ask in voir dire that would help to identify narcissistic traits in the jurors. That's something to give us a call about, and we can sit down and strategize those. That is certainly our expertise. In fact, on staff, some of our consultants during their clinical time, their complete expertise was solely personality disorders and treating personality disorders for multiple decades. So we certainly have the knowledge and expertise in that arena. In conclusion, the narcissist and the person with narcissistic traits does not believe in social sanctions, does not believe that society as a whole deserves more than the individual, that they want and need for themselves, and they value the values that mirror those latter statements. Again, this is episode 108, Identifying and Handling the Narcissistic Witness and Jury. Thanks again for listening to the Litigari podcast, where we partner with trial lawyers to navigate the psychological nuances of litigation. We look forward to speaking with you again at our next podcast.